Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Jesus. Today we're going to recap Esther's chapter 1 and 2. This is going to be kind of a quick overview of everything that we went over yesterday morning. There's a lot of names in here that I'm going to butcher, just warning ahead of time. It's just going to be me for today. Carmen's got a couple of chores that she has yet to accomplish, so she's going to do that, and I'm going to talk to you guys. Okay, so to begin with, the main characters in Esther is going to be Xerxes the First, he's also known as Ahasuerus. He is the king who ruled over 127 provinces. His queen, Vashti, of course, Esther, who the book is written about and named for. Haman, who is King Ahasuerus' right-hand man, kind of his go-to. And then Mordecai, who is Esther's cousin, who is more of a paternal figure to her. Her parents passed away, and he kind of adopted her and took care of her. Okay. So, Persia was defeated, and Babylon inherited the people of Judah. So the deported people were allowed to go back to their native lands, rebuild their temples, and worship their gods, as long as they remained loyal to Persia. And by this, it meant like continuing to pay taxes. And honestly, one of the prior kings wanted to be prayed for by the people. Not all Jews went back to Judah because of how hard the trip would be. So this is why there are different Jews in different areas. Mordecai and Esther lived in Susa, which was one of the Persian empires. One thing, or a couple things that I want to mention going into this study is that in a lot of the different commentaries that I read about it, some of the same questions came up. One of them was that God is never mentioned in the book of Esther. Like, he's never flat out mentioned. However, you can clearly see where God is working and God is doing things, even though it's not specifically talked about it being through God. So as we go through the study, try to look for those God winks that I've talked about before, just where you see absolutely nothing else could have made this happen except for God. Okay, so we're going to start in sinus infection stage, so sorry if I keep sniffing, clear my throat, all of that. I hate it when people do that, and I'm so sorry that I keep doing it. But let's start in Esther 1, chapters 1 through 8. So King Ahasuerus is having a huge banquet, and when I say huge banquet, like everybody is there, and it's a look at me party. So he wants everybody to come, but he wants everybody to come and to have fun and to see how great he is, see all of the things that he has, see all of the women that he has, just look at me, look at me, look at me. That is the whole point of this banquet. Okay, verse 9 tells us that Queen Vashti is also having a party for all of the women of the palace. In verse 10, no surprise, the king was drunk, and he told his eunuch, the eunuchs to go and get the queen. And in some commentaries, I think that it's important to say that where it says the queen was requested to come to the banquet wearing her crown, some commentaries say like that was all he wanted her to be wearing. So I don't know about y'all, but when I picture this in my mind, I just see a whole bunch of drunk people who have been partying for a whole lot of days. And then how terrible is that going to be for Queen Vashti, it is known that she is nice looking, to literally walk in and flaunt herself only wearing a crown. I think I understand why she said no. I don't know. I don't know. I can't imagine how the look on her face when that guy was like, hey, the king is requesting you and just your crown to come. I would be like, no. Anyways, so, in verse 12, we obviously see that the king is mad. And the king had advisors around him, so he didn't make most decisions alone. He had people around him that surrounded him that helped him with those decisions. So, excuse me, immediately King Ahasuerus went to his advisors asking what can be done. He was mad because he didn't get his way. He felt disrespected, and he was made to look dumb at his look at me party. So, like, on a random Tuesday, this may not have been bad, but because it was this huge banquet with all these people involved, I think that made it even worse. Verse 15 says, what penalty does the law provide? So the king wants to know, hey, right now, we got to figure this out. Vashti is clearly getting punished. What can we do to her? The advisors pointed out that not only was it a personal issue, but it was an even bigger issue. We're going to pretend like I'm not having to get my Bible out. I didn't get it out. Sorry. I'm going to read a passage. I'm in the middle of looking for a new Bible because these words are really little. So I'm going to, excuse me while I look so close, but I'm in the middle of looking for a new one. So I'm going to read verses 17 and 18. And the king... I'm in the wrong chapter. Sorry. Chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands, and when they learn that the Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. So the biggest thing that they are now focusing on is the fact that all of these other women are going to be like, wait a minute, she said no. So does that mean I can say no? Let me continue at 18. Before this day is out, the wives of all of the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear that what the queen did, and they will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. So, where this started to be a pretty big personal issue, has now, he sees that this could be an issue throughout his kingdom. Verse 19. The king should pick another queen, more worthy. The decree will make all of the men get respect that they should get from their wives or else. So immediately, we're done with Queen Vashti. She messed up. She messed up big. She messed up for all of the females in the kingdom. She's done. She's no longer worthy. Can you imagine, and this is something we talked about yesterday, having one decision change your worthiness? So this whole God wink thing that I told you to look for, our Father is there even when we make bad decisions. Our Father knows that we are worthy even when we feel like we don't. I know, looking back in my life, I can pinpoint certain times where I didn't feel like I was worthy. I didn't feel like I was worthy of his love, anybody else's love. And this one decision, and I mean, honestly, what other woman would have not made this decision? So it's not like some crazy big thing. Like, she made what I would say is a good decision. And for that good decision, she's been exiled. Like, no longer welcome in the kingdom. No longer the queen off of one decision. I just think, I thank God that my one decisions, or my several dumb one decisions, didn't exile me from being a part of our Heavenly Father's kingdom. Verse 22 tells us, he sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and its own language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler over his own home and should say whatever he pleases. So basically, he is making a king's decree that the men are in charge. All because of this one decision. All right. So let's start in chapter 2. Quite funny to me. Verse 1. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he had begun thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree that he had made. So what you're saying is he sobered up and calmed down. He made a knee-jerk decision off of one decision that she made, and now everything is going to be changed. Again, I think that we need to remember the God winks in this. Be slow to anger. Don't make rash decisions in the heat of the moment. I know that's something that I take from it. Do you think that the king had regret? Do you think that as he's sobering up, maybe his frustration and anger from the king being disappointed or disrespected had moved to something personal, that like on a personal level he was hurt maybe from it? Verse 2, it sounds kind of like maybe he was sad and lonely. It says, so his personal attendant suggested, let us search the empire to find young virgins for the king. Okay, I don't know. Every time I read that, I think about Cinderella, and I know that some people are not going to like that I'm comparing the book of Esther to Cinderella. Sorry, it's just what I think of. But like all of the eligible maidens coming to the ball, like that's what I'm envisioning is happening. All of the eligible virgins are coming to the ball for King Ahasuerus to pick his next queen. A little bit more details go into it than Cinderella, but still, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Okay, so at this point in chapter 2, we hear in chapter 1, we meet everybody and figure out what's going on. We know that King Ahasuerus is kind of lonely. We see that the people around him want him to have a new wife. And then, breaks. We got a side note. And the side note is verses 5 through 7. At this time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. Jair? I don't know. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. Don't know that either. Sorry. His family had been among those who, with the king... Y'all, I told you these names are bad. Among those who with King Jehoshaphat of Judah had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. So, like, out of nowhere, hey, here's Esther. She's really pretty. What other words did it say she was? She was lovely. Hey, look at her. So I just think it's funny that there's immediately a side note from that. And it continues on with verse 8. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, were brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. So Haggai was the main guy that was in charge of the harem, where all of these eligible ladies were going to be living. In verse 9, it tells us that he was very impressed with Esther and treated her very kindly. He gave her like the best of things, put her in the best places. Actually got together some of the maids for Esther specifically. Kind of like he had picked who he wanted the king to see and who he wanted the king to like. Esther knew that her nationality could and would be a problem, so she kept it a secret, as Mordecai had advised her to do. I want to pause here because I think this is something kind of big. Also, I feel a sneeze coming. Sorry. Have you ever had to hide who you are or who you feel like you are, but people don't see that? For a lot of my life, I did that. I had this big false boss, intimidating, rough facade that I lived behind because I was scared for people to know who I really was. Clearly, it's different because Esther was Jewish and it was more of a safety and protection thing. But I just want to take this time to pause and to tell you, don't change who you are for anyone. And don't hide who you are, because you are exactly who God created you to be. And that person that you feel inside is who everyone should be able to see on the outside. Okay, sorry. There's my side note. So, verse 11 tells us that Mordecai was kind of keeping tabs on Esther. He was excited for her to go, but kind of like, is she okay? Is everything going okay? So he would take a walk near the harem to see what was going on with her. Excuse me. So, pick up in verse 13. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given the choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. She was, sorry. There she was under the care of Sashgaz, the king's eunuch, in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had specifically enjoyed her and requested her by name. I think that this is very important for later in Esther, that we know that she made her appearance, all of the things happened, and then she wasn't supposed to go back unless the king said, hey, Esther, come here. As she went in, Haggai, again, who was showing her favor, told her what she needed to do, what she needed to wear, what she needed to say. And then in verse 17, we quickly find out the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set a royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. So clearly, she was listening to what Haggai said and to what Mordecai said, and she was made queen. Who does this make us think of? Ruth, maybe? Remember when Ruth didn't have anybody else? She didn't know anything about God, but she listened to Naomi. She did everything that Naomi said, and then eventually everything came together. So this is another example of obedient women. Pause again, and side note for a Michelle fact. I don't like being told what to do. But sometimes we as women need guidance. I know if I would have been less hard-headed in times of my life and listened to those people, and I'm specifically thinking of a couple coaches right now who tried to redirect me, if I would have listened to those people, my life would have been so much easier. Looking back, hindsight's 2020. Listen to the people around you. Again, like we talked about in Ruth, it's important to have that group of people around you that can push you up, that can push you in the right direction, that can call you when you're making a bad decision, but can also positively influence you. So Esther listened, and Esther is queen. The king had a banquet in Esther's honor and made it a holiday and gave gifts to everyone. Verse 19 brings us up to speed on Mordecai. He's having to take those walks and see what's going on. So verse 19 says, even after all of the young women had been transferred to the second harem, and Mordecai had become a palace official. So now he's inside. No longer does he have to sneak around. He's on the inside crew. He knows what's going on. this was very important because of what's to come. But Mordecai and Esther still agreed, hey, you're the queen, but let's just keep that whole Jewish thing a secret. Let's not tell anybody, for your safety, for our safety, for all of the Jews in the area's safety. It then goes on to tell us something very important that's going to come into play later. So while Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's officials were talking about how they were upset with the king and actually had planned to kill him. Mordecai heard this and immediately went to give the information to Queen Esther, who Esther told the king, hey, this guy Mordecai is saying, X, Y, and Z. These people are planning to kill you because you made him mad. So an investigation was done, and Mordecai's story was found to be true. The two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This was recorded in the book of history of King Xerxes' reign. So that's something that's going to come up a little bit later. Just remember that, end on that note, that what Mordecai did was documented. Because again, that'll come back later. Y'all, I feel like today was pretty quick. I'm sorry that it's late, but I appreciate you following this journey. I'm going through a lot in my spiritual life and in my personal life, and this is helping me, and so I appreciate your support. Nothing, like, nobody's sick, nothing's wrong. I'm just dealing with stuff that I haven't dealt with before. So don't freak out and blow up my inbox about what's going on. If you would like to pray for me, pray for continued peace, because that's something that I'm working on, and you should too. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be in a good place. Remember, I was just about to pick up my phone to look at my calendar. I'm recording on my phone. So this is the 5th. So yesterday was the 4th. So not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday will be the next in-person session. And we'll be doing Esther 3 and 4. We're going to be meeting back in Campobello at Buck and Brew, because that just seems to be working right now, at 10 o'clock, which was amazing to start at 10 o'clock. I think it worked for everybody. So, real quick, I'm going to pray for everybody and then see y'all in a couple weeks. And please, if you want to, send me messages or text messages or Facebook messages, Instagram messages don't always come through. I don't know why. And I don't really know how to work YouTube. I'm just posting these videos on it. But if you want to get in touch with me and ask me questions or ask me to pray for you or tell me stories or whatever, please know that door is always open. Okay, let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for these women that are in my life, whether they are watching the videos and supporting that way, or coming to the in-person sessions, or just, sending a prayer up to you for the growth of this ministry. Thank you for the confidence that I'm gaining through this. Thank you for the relationship that Carmen and I are building together with you. Dear Lord, please help us be a light in other people's lives, dear Lord. Thank you for the lights that you have placed in my lives through those that are around me. Please continue to help us grow. Help us remember to be bold, like Ruth, and help us to be consistent and to remember those that are around us and the reasons that they're there. Thank you for everything that you do. Please bless all of these women. Dear Heavenly Father, in your precious name I pray. Amen. Thanks, guys. See you later.